Start.
Hello, welcome to the second series of DevOps GitHub. So myself, Kananga Sabapati, and we have Srihari also here. So throughout this series, we are going to see the version control system. Predominantly, we'll be focusing on Git and GitHub. And yeah, we also have some working session planned today, like how to run the basic set of commands. So that's all we are going to see today. So let's jump on to the version control system. So why do we need a version control system and for what reason? So let's consider a use case. So we have shown a illustration here. So consider there is a project file called A. So you are creating a new file A in the first step. Second step, you are adding 2 lines of code on that file. Then the third step, you are removing a line from the 2 lines of code. And the fourth step, you are adding some comments, and suddenly you realize like you need the previous changes which you entered in the stage 2, I mean step 2. So you have already removed a line and made some modification, but later suddenly you realize you need some lines of code which you entered in stage 2. But you have already, like on the each stage, you have saved that file and you don't have that previous state. So how do you recover or go to the stage 2, or you get uh, the line which you have overwritten? So it is nearly not possible in a normal use case, right? So that's why we have version control. That's the power of version control system. So what it will do, it will keep tracking each line of changes you made on that file. So that is showed in the illustration B here. So this is how it works with version control system. For example, the same step you're doing here, you're creating a project file, and when you add 2 lines of code, it automatically versions that state as a version 1.0. And but what I mean by automatically is like you have to issue some Git commands in order to make Git to track this file. So that we will see in the later part of this session today. So once you issue some commands to this file, it keeps tracking that file. Like for example, if you made any changes in the stage 2, you are adding 2 lines of code here. So that will be taken as version 1.0. And if you remove a line from the 2 lines of code in stage 3, that will be versioned as 1.1. Same goes for adding the comments. And finally, when you recognize or realize like you need some of the lines from stage 2, so it is very much possible in version control system. Like you can directly go back to the stage 2 with the commit hash ID of this commit, and you can start developing or recover your changes and make your update on those files. Okay, so that's the power of version control system. So merely like in every development project, we'll be using version control system, and there are different types of version control system in market. So we will see like what is the different types of version control system does. Okay, so here we have 2 types of version control system. One is the centralized version control system. Second one is the distributed version control system. So the main difference between centralized version control and distributed version control is like, so we have a central server, centralized version control system server. And when you do a checkout, like for example, let's check out in the sense like you are taking a copy of a file to your local machine. That is basically a checkout in a version control terminologies. Okay. So here, for example, if you want to modify a version 3, so you can, in the centralized version control system, it is possible to check out only that version to your local system. But on the other hand, in the distributed version control system, so you have a same kind of a central VCS server. So you can actually clone the entire report to your local machine. It's just like a local copy of your central VCS server. Okay. So this makes distributed version control system much more popular than the centralized version control system, because you don't need a continuous connectivity to your centralized version control system server. So basically, like you can work in an isolated mode without any network connection or internet. So you can keep developing your changes on your local system. So once you are ready, you can connect to your centralized version control system server and push your changes to the central repository. So that's the power of the distributed version control system. I hope this is clear. So let's move on to the some of the concepts of Git. Like how do you make changes in your local workspace and push those changes to the centralized version control system server? So the local repo means the repo that exists on your local system, I mean on your laptop. So if you talk about the centralized version control system server, that's something like a GitHub. So it is a kind of a service that's been provided in order to hold the repos. So why do we need to hold a repo? For example, consider a development project. If 100 people are working on the project, and one feature will be developed by developer A, another feature will be worked out by developer B, but at the end, the project should contain both the changes from developer A and developer B. So we need to collaborate all the changes in a kind of a central place. So for that, we need a GitHub. So GitHub is a kind of a hosted platform service that holds all the repositories. Like developer can contribute their changes and they can push their changes to the centralized server. So that centralized server is a kind of a common hub for the project. So if you want to deploy a package or a code to some web server, the package will be taken from the GitHub only, not from your local workspace. So that's why like we need some kind of a central place to store all the developer changes. So that is the need for GitHub. So here we will see like how in a typical development scenario, how a developer will be developing the code and pushing the code, pulling that information from the remote repo to local repo kind of thing. Okay. So let's consider a project. A new project has been kicked off, and some of the developers has been asked to develop some features. I mean, so how this is getting started? Let's consider in GitHub there is an already a remote, repo created. The name of the repo should be your project name or something unique in terms of your project. Okay, so once the repo is created, it just contains only the bare repo. Nothing, no changes has been made to that repo yet. So what you have to, or what the developer has to do, first of all, they have to clone that repo to local workspace in order to push their changes. Okay, so for that, we'll be using a command called clone, git clone, which fetches or clones the entire remote repo information to your local repo. Local repo in the sense your laptop. Okay. So once you successfully cloned that repo, what you will be doing, you will be making some changes to that repo, which means like adding a file, removing a file, kind of things. So once you are done, so you have to push the changes to remote repo. Push in the change from the local repo to the remote repo. In this way, your changes will be pushed to a centralized server called GitHub. Okay. So at the same time, some other developer will be contributing the code and they will be pushing their changes to the GitHub. So if you want to get the latest changes, what you have to do, you have to use git pull command, which pulls all the latest information from the GitHub server to your local repo. Okay. So there is also another command called git fetch, which also fetches the latest information from the remote repo to local repo. But the difference between git pull and git fetch is like git fetch will not actually automatically merge the changes, but it will ask for the user confirmation whether that change has to be merged or not. So we will see those informations later, but this is just a kind of a heads up, like how the changes moves from a local repo to remote repo. Okay. So we do also have commands like git add and git commit. Git add is something like it's a kind of a staging environment, staging area, which means like you are asking Git to track a particular file. So in case if you are adding a line or removing a line, Git tracks those changes once you use git add command. So git commit in the sense like you are going to finalize the changes and it's ready for push. That is the purpose of git commit. Okay. So that's all about the architecture, like how to push changes from local repo to remote repo. So next, Srihari will be explaining you some of the important Git terminologies. And also like will have some kind of hands-on session.
Thank you, Sabha. Sabha, with your explanation, I was able to one can understand what is version control system, and why we need it. So I understood the way you told that if without a version control, if I want to reach a previous stage, I have to manually do this. But with the version control, it's possible directly to reach to the just by referring to the version, right? So that way I understood that point. And coming to the version control and the major types. So yes, the entire working copy of the project itself will be in the local, right? So even if there is a network disconnect, even if I'm outside the office network, I can still connect. I can still complete my compilation and my project activities in the disconnected manner. And once the network is back, I can push the changes. So I don't need to wait to do complete project execution, even if there is no connection. That's the benefit of distributed version control system. Yeah, we understood that with Sabha's explanation. Now we will move to some of the activity. So here, before we go into deep of the terminologies and the exercises that we are planning to do today, we need to have a connectivity between the main Git and the local settings in the local laptop. So we have to install a Git client, and then it should connect to the server GitHub, where it is either hosted in a public repo, or it will be a self-hosted or an enterprise, which is only used by the corresponding enterprise. So now After to do that, we need to, after installing the steps, git installation following the steps mentioned here. So now we will perform certain exercises to understand the concepts which was explained by Sabhavati. Let me write down the steps. So we are going to create a repo, add a file in Git UI, clone that repo, pull the changes to local from Git client, make changes, add the changes, and commit. Also, once the changes are committed, try to push the changes to the remote. So now we are going to do this step so that everybody will understand what we are doing. So I am using a Windows machine. In my machine, I have Git client already installed. I'm going to delete the local repo. So it's a it's an empty directory, right? I'm going to create. So in order to connect to the GitHub repo, there are two methodologies I have mentioned here. So you can follow any one of the method, either via SSH or via PAT token. So both the steps have been described here. So you can do either one of the way. Right now I have connected via PAT token. So now we will continue doing this exercise with the PAT token approach. So coming to the steps, now I'm going to create a new repo. We go to the, here, if you see here, the Gleanup class is the organization, and inside this organization all the repositories are grouped. So now I'm going to create a new repo. So here, for the reason it's now there is no sensitive information, and it's for the demo purpose. So I'm making it as a public repo, adding a readme file. And this git ignore, if you want to ignore any files, particular file type, you can use any one of the format and add a git ignore file. I'm going to create a repository. I'm going to edit this file. I'm going to add a dummy file. So if you see here, by default, I have the git one hyphen demo is created with the readme file, and it is in the, by default, it has the main branch, right? So branch is something which is used for a parallel development activity. We will be seeing more details about the parallel development activity and the branch and merge strategies in the next session. But here, just keep in mind that branch is one workspace or one area where parallel activity can be done. So now we have created a file here. Now I want to bring this entire project repo. So there may be a number of files I can add in git1-demo. Like for example, if it is Java project, I can add Java files, or a Visual Basic file or .NET file. All the files in a proper folder structure will be added in this project repo. Now I want to bring this repo to my local. So what I'm going to do is I want to bring that repo to my local, I need to do a clone. So let me clone the repo. So using PAT token method, which I have explained in the section, in the reference section, I am just changing the name of the repo name, which I have used earlier, git1-demo. So in the new directory, the test directory, I'm going to clone this repo. If you see here, I'm just using the command git clone https Gleanup class, that's the username, and this is the PAT token. And finally, I'm giving the repo name. So now, if you see 100% receiving objects, then it means that all the contents from the remote repo is downloaded to your local repo. Let me get into the repo. Okay, so when the client will know this is a Git repo only if there is a .git folder, .git directory is there. So if you see here, there will be a .git directory inside. So that's why once I clone this repo, the entire project contents gets downloaded along with this .git folder where all the Git related information will be stored. Now, inside this, if you see, there is a main automatically pops up here. This means it represents the branch. So in which branch the local repo is there. Now we have created a repo in an organization. We have cloned the repo. We have added the file there and we have cloned the repo. Now you see all the file content. If you do cat, so this is a new file. You are able to see the content of the file which you have edited here. Now, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new branch and then we are going to push these changes there. And also we are going to make a small change to this file. Okay, so I'm editing this file. I've saved the file. If you see the changes in the local. Now I am trying to create another branch also to store this change. So check -b. So I'm putting as new BR. So now if you could see, there is the changes happen is new BR. So now if I make any changes to in this branch, it will not disturb the main branch. Let me add a new change here. So I have made some changes in the new branches. Now I am adding all these changes which I made and I'm going to commit it. So far what we did is, you see this architecture. So we have created a repo. We have made some changes. We have cloned that repo to my local, and I have added some minor changes in one branch, created a branch. Now, from this remote repo, we have did a clone, and I have made the changes, and Now we have did add some changes as well. Still, it is in the staging area only. Now I have to update in my local repo, that is committing in my local repo, and then I have to do a push, then it will go the changes to the remote repo. If you see here in the Git demo, still this file doesn't have the change, right? Because I have just added my changes in my staging area only. Even it doesn't add it to my local repo. So now I'm doing a commit. Just a test message, we have to do a comment. To understand what is the purpose. So now if you see, I have did a commit. Even after the commit, if I refresh here, I will not see the changes because my changes are still in this local repo only. Still it has to reach the server or the remote location. To do that, I have to do a commit. You have to do a push, git push. So here, since we have cloned from a main branch, the local repo and the remote repo doesn't know there is a new branch called new br. So I have to use this command, which is already given here. Okay, so now if I go and refresh, you can see the new branch here. And then if you see here, only 2 lines will be there. But if you go here and see the new branch, you will see the third changes from the local branch, new branch is also appear in the separate branch. So without disturbing the main branch, we have made the file changes and we have pushed here. So that's the beauty of the branch, as well as now we are able to understand clone, add, commit, and push, right? So if now I'm going to make a change here in the main branch, maybe in the new branch itself, I'm going to make a change, fourth change. UI, and I'm doing a commit. So if you see here in the local, I open the file, test file, I see only 3 lines here. The fourth change which is made from the UI is not reflecting. So to get that, if any other user makes the changes also from the remote repo, if I want to get that, I have to do git. So now if I do a cat, I can see all the 4 changes reflecting. All right. So hope this makes you understand the concept of a local repo, remote repo, pull, push, commit, add, and everything. So we will be covering more topics in the upcoming session. And the next session would be like merging strategies, and how the pull request, how multiple developer can collaborate will be covered in the next session. We have explained the terminologies here for your reference. I'd recommend to go through these steps for installation and try the connectivity via PAT or SSH based approach. Thank you. Thank you.